Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. For any business owner who has tried to scale, the name of the game is getting everyone on the same page. Many of us have heard of the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, Scaling Up System. But what happens when a company's growth brings more complexity than those systems are designed for? Today, we're going to dive deep into an alternative, the Pinnacle Business Operating System. And we've pretty much all the Pinnacle guides in all of Canada here joining us today to walk us through it. So joining us from Calgary is Mike Joseph. Mike is a Pinnacle Business Guide, a Master Forum Chair for McKay CEO Forums, and the Principal Executive Advisor at the Joseph Group, and a longtime entrepreneur as well. And just down the street in Edmonton is Ryan. Ryan is also a Pinnacle Business Guide and a lifelong entrepreneur, having been the president of Patron West Equipment Financing for over 24 years. Today's Fractional Pros Canada podcast is powered by Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional executive community, now with over 1,000 members across Canada. Join us on Facebook. Just search for the Fractional Pros Canada group, or if you're not on Facebook, just DM me, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to hook you up. All right, Mike, Ryan, welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Nice
All right, so gentlemen, the first thing that stands out about both of you is that despite what you're doing now, it's not what you were doing before. In other words, you're not, in quotes, career consultants. You've both been in the trenches as business owners for decades, and now you've, so to speak, crossed the street to help other business owners. So starting with you, Ryan, how does first spending many years as a longtime business owner in commercial finance, of all things, change how you approach to being a business guide today?
That's a great question. I think what it has allowed me to do is just have a sense of empathy and understanding for the president or CEO or founder of the company as to what the experience they're going through and what that feels like. And, and having as much experience as well financing other businesses, I was almost exclusively dealing with the owners of those businesses. And so I've had just this cumulative experience of, the 10,000 hours, so to speak, of both running a business and knowing what that's like, and then financing other businesses and seeing what their run like and how it works. So yeah, I think it's just a nice cross section of those two.
Nice. And Mike, in addition to being a business owner yourself, an entrepreneur, you've been on the member side of other peer groups in the past, like Tech Canada, EO. So how does all that experience shape the way you facilitate and guide, and lead teams today?
Yeah, I think, fortunately, having had those experiences to see how these other peer groups work, for example, gave me exposure to different styles and facilitation techniques. And so, having the unique perspective of being a member and watching others, now being on the other side, I'm able to kind of bring my own style and see what I thought was an effective methodology from a member perspective and bring that now into the facilitator's chair. So I think it's been super helpful. Yeah.
Mike, I have to say your profile is refreshingly candid. You describe yourself as authentic, dynamic, comedic, and intuitive, but also impatient, impulsive, and self-deprecating.
Yeah. That's why I'm not a wealth advisor. The impatient and impulsive point of view. I had to learn that the hard way.
But that great combination, and you're so upfront about it, means you're very self-aware, presumably, and that presumably also makes you a better coach and forum chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that, if we think about leadership today, I think that leading with empathy and humility are really important. I think how people, it's not this sort of top down, traditional, everybody, comes and kisses the ring of the CEO. Those days are over. There's lots of opportunities for people. They want to, work for companies that stand for something. They want to work for leaders that have similar values. And so I think that those are, I just think there's lots of options out there today for young executives and employees that, are maybe breaking some of the sort of traditions of the past with respect to the workforce, right?
Yeah, it's funny when you say the kiss the ring. It brought me back to a job I had years ago when I was still in the 9 to 5 world. And in the parking lot, the first two spots closest to the door were reserved, big sign, president and then vice president. And it was kind of a weird, reassuring feeling that whenever I'd pull up in the parking lot and see the president spot filled with his, very expensive car, at once it irked me a little bit that there's that equality, that empathy that we just talked about isn't there, but at the same time kind of reassured me. There was a voice inside of me that said, as long as the president is showing up in his expensive car, I guess the company's doing okay.
Interesting
Yeah.
perspective.
So Ryan, you also have an interesting background. You've studied contemporary and jazz music. You have a background in entertainment. So there's a clear element of some kind of improvisation and art going on there. So how do you find that creative background has influenced or does influence the work you do in an otherwise very structured world of business operating systems?
Yeah, that's you know what? That's a question I started asking myself a few years ago. What the intersection was, because the arts side of me, like the creative side of me, I felt was sort of put on the back burner for a number of years in my life, but not realizing it was still the essence of who I am. So I'm a creative, and I think and that's usually where I found success in my own business was when I was able to take these ideas that were sometimes are abstract and turn them into a product or a service that was differentiating. I think the commonality there, and you see it a lot now with like even Rick Rubin, who's a famous producer of a lot of bands, and Stephen Pressfield, who's an author, and he talks about the his book, The War of Art. It's that creatives and entrepreneurs are actually in the same sort of soup, because what we do, what's common about what we do is things are in the air. They don't exist right now until we get some sort of idea or inspiration, and then we can drive through that mess of completing something that is a product, service, a song, a piece of art, a sculpture, whatever that is. So there is a lot of correlation between that. What I like about the framework of an operating system is that it allows people to do that within a framework that makes sense and helps organize those ideas and execute on it faster. So it's kind of like the relation to music is maybe the chord charts or the style or whatever it is. You have a framework to work within, so then you're more free to exercise all those ideas and execute more quickly. So
It's kind of like going from, the entrepreneur, the creative is creating something out of nothing. The operating system is creating a better something out of whatever already exists in some way.
yeah, it is. It's really just it's a way to operate. But
All right, so let's get into that. So Ryan, we spoke a while back, and you described Pinnacle to me as a more adaptable, outcome-driven system than EOS, designed for more established companies. And we've had some EOS people on here in the past, and this isn't meant to compare and say one system is better than another. This is more about how they're different, and different systems are better for different businesses at different stages. So let's talk about the Pinnacle Business Operating System and what's the core problem that it solves that other systems might not do or might not do as well.
yeah, I think the key one is the adaptability. So it's a system that's designed so that it can move around the reality of the business instead of the business having to fit inside the system and stay inside the system. That's why it was born, and that's why I decided to pick up that flag, is because it does allow for that freedom to adapt. So like businesses aren't linear. You don't go from where you are now to where you want to be in a linear fashion. There's all this all these other things that happen. So if you try to force a business into like a framework, then it can become very limiting and even frustrating. So a limited framework or a structured framework is good for a certain point in the business, maybe when they're getting started or they're coming from nothing and they got to move to something and they can start to get some cadences around meetings. But when you really want to scale, you're going to need more adaptability, and that's what I believe is the biggest feature of Pinnacle.
All right, Mike, do you concur?
Yeah, I was just thinking as Ryan was speaking, I had a 2-day base camp kickoff with a new client last week, and they had come from EOS, and they were familiar with the scaling up model as well. And they're like, well, I don't know how we're going to need 2 days together in a boardroom because, we've already got our core values and we've got our, purpose and we've got our BHAG and, they were sort of explaining to me that, a big part of our base camp agenda focused on these vision components. And I said, well, no problem. Let's get in. Let's audit it. Let's make sure you're comfortable with it, that you're bringing these pieces to life, and that they're baked into your culture. And if not, we can move on, right? I'm not so sure that always works in the other frameworks, but so it disarmed the client, and then of course you get into it and you realize that they've made some great progress, but there was still work to do, and we approached it in a disarming fashion that allowed them to be open-minded. And at the end of the day, we ended up getting the best result, I think, for the client, and they were really happy about it. But had I gone in there saying, no, we're going to start from top to bottom, and you've got to get these foundational pieces correct in the manner in which we believe they need to be in order to build on, I'm not so sure that client would have been open to that. So creating that sort of flexibility, as Ryan mentioned, within the framework was hugely important, right, in building trust with the client and being able to move forward.
And so, Mike, one other. Oh, sorry, Ryan. Did you want to build on that?
Yeah, because Mike keyed on a point, is that to be able to walk into or to facilitate a group of leaders, business owners and their leadership team, and determine how to use the system to best fit them now and move forward takes a lot of experience. I think you have to have been in business yourself, or you've had to have been a professional facilitator for a long time. So that sense of being able to walk in the room and have some maneuverability versus what Mike was saying, well, you need to follow the system. Those are two different types of people. One is basically can come from anywhere and say, here's a template, learn the template, teach this to others. The other one is, okay, here's a template. Now you have to have some sort of game sense as to know where to bend it and move it and shape it because we're objective driven and not agenda driven. So as long as we have the objectives clear, the agenda is a servant to that. And that may sound nuanced, but it's actually incredibly important.
Yeah, that is definitely nuanced, but it's an important nuance, and I guess that speaks to the flexibility of the Pinnacle program. Mike, one of the things that is interesting about your background is, aside from being a Pinnacle guide, you're also a master forum chair with McKay CEO Forums, which is really all about peer-to-peer experience sharing. And I would imagine that peer-to-peer mindset really complements what you do with the Pinnacle system.
100%. And, I became a coach first, or a Pinnacle Business Guide first, before building forum groups. But I had been a member of forum groups throughout, from the time I was 30 until the time I was, when I started my coaching career about 10 years ago at 45. And I think that kind of building them side by side was interesting because you on the one hand, I thought sort of being a trusted advisor for business owners, I got one perspective. I get to sit in the room and see how these business owners supported each other and help problem solve. And then I was able to, work with some of those business owners and their leadership teams on the Pinnacle side. So yeah, two different sides of the coin, but both very complementary. And yeah, continue to enjoy being involved in both organizations today.
And so both of you, you've seen multiple systems out there. You've been on both sides of the streets. You've been the entrepreneur. You've been the coach, so to speak. So for business leaders who are listening today, CEOs, founders, what do you think is the way for them to choose? They kind of get to a crossroads where they feel they need some kind of additional support. They're not running on any kind of system other than what the business has just organically grown itself, and they're kind of feeling like we're kind of stuck, but we don't know where to go. And then they start doing some research. They do the Google, maybe it's the perplexity these days, and say, tell me, here's my business, here's where we're at, here's the basics. Which of these systems would be right for me? So how would you guys answer that? What's kind of the litmus test for a business leader to know if the Pinnacle system is the right fit for them versus the other choices out there?
You want to answer that, Ryan, or do you want?
I'll take a
Yeah, go
swing
for
at
it.
it. Yeah, it's a number of things. I think uh, Pinnacle, in my view, works best when there is a delegative team in place, or the desire to get one quickly. So, to come in with a solopreneur or a very small mom and pop shop that's really just looking to maybe get some stability in there, it's probably not the best fit. But if you're a business that's already got some delegative, like a leadership team and different seats, or you're fast growing and your goal is to get there pretty quick, then Pinnacle works best when there can be a few hands to help run the business and grow it. That'd be one thing. The second thing is and this is a differentiator, is we're not designed to give the keys back to the client to self-implement or to do this on their own. It works. It's like a coach of a team. We're kind of here in the long haul. As long as we're winning, we're winning. Like you don't get rid of your coach as soon as the team wins the cup and say, well, the team knows how to win now, so let's get rid of the coach. So we're kind of here for the long term as well. For that CEO or that founder, that president, and their team. So it's, as long as it's working, it's working. We keep dialing it up. So those would be a couple of things. You got to have some economies of scale there to be able to use this system in its full capacity, is in my view. And then also consider that, is this something that I'd like to maybe do long term? So they really have to like Mike. They really have to, like me, believe that we're a good fit, as well as the system is a good fit.
Yeah, I would build on what Ryan's saying there. I think that being around executive education for the last 25 years, I became very familiar with scaling up in the early days and was a big enthusiastic supporter of Vern Harnish and what he was doing over there, and did a number of programs and adopted a lot of the stuff there. And I sort of view what Vern did. He was very pioneering with the one-page strategic plan. Gino Wickman, of course, developed the 2.0 version of that and was extremely successful. And then I like to think that Greg Cleary, who was one of the top performing EOS implementers, and in their system, he kind of, when he left EOS, I think he went back to scaling up and thought, what are some of the great things about each of these systems that I might be able to build on, and then of course, like anything, bring his own personal experience and exposure to working with lots and lots of clients, and built out the Pinnacle system. And I think that's what it did. So I think it's just, maybe Pinnacle is the 3.0 version. Definitely to reiterate what Ryan said, is this flexibility within the framework, and the customization of Pinnacle is amazing. But for sure, it starts with pick the guide first. Like you got to find somebody. I don't care if it's you're joining a forum group with McKay or YPO, or you're gonna work with a scaling up coach or a Pinnacle coach. I think ultimately you need to be on the same page with somebody that you have a similar style or values and that you feel that you can work with. I think that is paramount, right? So I believe that the adoption of any system starts with, having the guide and the business owner on the same page.
Yeah, I'd say that that you mentioned that one of the things is the fit as the ability for a guide or a facilitator or a coach to level the room and not pander to the president, CEO, founder. So it's like if you're going to make change, you need to be able to have a strength as of character to be able to even pull the founder aside and say, hey, like what's happening here, or how you feeling about this, or this is what I'm seeing and what I'm sensing. So it's being a yes person versus, okay, are we again objective driven, and what's the best way to get there? So that's a bit of discernment there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a cultural fit is so important, as it is in any business setting, as it is in any social setting, especially when we're talking about, outside of the office, if you have a partner, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever it is, cultural fit. I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about the people. So it's interesting that at some point, even what the system is may not be as important as the cultural fit with the coach who is helping you with it.
Yeah, and Ryan, to your point, that whole coach or guide CEO dynamic is crucial because, of course, the company is paying you to work with them, but at the same time, you do not work for them because, I mean, that's a mindset that's super important because the second that you pander to, the CEO's agenda as opposed to what you feel are the best options for the company is, I think that really compromises your objectivity and your ability to do effective work that benefits the organization, right?
How do you navigate that? So you're in the room and you're reading the room, and the CEO, the founder they're pretty locked into their vision and what they want the outcome to be. But you're reading from the room, from the rest of the C-suite team or whoever else is in there, that they're seeing it completely differently. And so what do you do? Do you kind of take one side? Do you do a quick analysis and say, all right, I think the team is right. I need to figure out how to get the CEO to be more open, or you don't go there? You're just trying to get everybody to communicate better and let them have the discussion and figure out between them what the right direction is.
Simple. We just we move the treats away from the CEO and move them over to the other people in the room. But it's really just a function, in my view, of an experience of taking space and time to invite the others to express, what they're thinking and their ideas and set the rules, like, and sort of that's what do you call the meeting hygiene as to what's safe. And it takes a bit of time working with the leadership team to figure those dynamics out. There's quiet people in the room, and there's the person who's going to respond first all the time, and then there's a visionary who usually has really good intentions, but is kind of downloading stuff on their team that they think they're just as excited to have. So it's really just about creating a safe environment and space for everybody to share, and then challenge the ideas and try to get buy-in. So it kind of takes time to develop that. But Mike, I don't know what your strategy is.
Yeah, I would say that, you have to, set the stage by, one of the ground rules of your session, I think, or certainly how I like to think about it is, this is a place for healthy conflict, right? We need to be able to debate and discuss ideas that we don't agree with, right? That has to be foundational to the work we're going to do. So as long as we're respectful, we can have a difference of opinion. And as a result of that, we're going to get the best answer or solution for the organization. So that would be part of it. I think the other piece of that is, as the business guide, is not my job to solve problems here, right? I'm here to, create an environment that's collaborative, that addresses or maybe changes how you look at the issues you're trying to solve, and creating that white space to allow them to solve it. So, we and my perspective on that has changed over time, because you're young and enthusiastic as a guide, and you're thinking, oh no, like if I can solve this, like there'll be lots more work here. I don't feel that was it is the best way to do it. You want them to become the problem solvers. Otherwise, like in any organization, you're going to be answering a lot of phone calls every time they have a problem for you to solve, right? And we're not experts in their field, right? So how can we know what's best, right? We're experts in terms of, our Pinnacle process or framework, but we're not experts in their business. So to be able to provide advice seems a bit precarious to me.
Yeah, it could be an interesting dynamic, because I would imagine often, a leader, a CEO reaches out to you because the company's in crisis, and there's a fire to put out, and what they're hoping to get is a firefighter come and put out our fire, figure out why our sales are sliding, figure out how do we stop this leaky sales pipeline, whatever it is. But you guys are not firefighters, so you come at it, and I would imagine sometimes that a CEO might be disappointed to hear that you're not going to solve their problems for them, but you're going to help them figure out how to solve their problems on their own.
That the fire hose is usually already in their office somewhere, and we just have to help them find it.
Right.
And sometimes they get frustrated because exactly that, like we often come with more questions than answers, right? Because we want them to think differently about what the problem is, right? So we come with more questions, and that can create some, hey, Mike, hey, Ryan, I didn't come to you for you to make more work for me, right? I was looking for a quick win here. And, we have to be kind of, well, you've come to the wrong place for that, right?
Yeah. I hired you for answers. You just hear more questions, and you're creating more problems. I already have problems. That's why I hired you. I don't need more problems. But I mean, it speaks to getting the foundational elements of a business right. And I see the same thing with clients I have as a fractional CMO. And very often the problem is just that the strategic foundation is just not there, or it's flawed. And the company is running in a direction without having that foundation in place, right? They're building the third floor on their house, and the foundation it's all built on is shaky. So it all speaks to foundational elements that we see over and over again, businesses making the same basic mistakes, even when it comes to the new shiny objects with, AI, great example. Companies adopting AI just too quickly, jumping on the bandwagon without having the foundational elements there. Speaking of AI, let's talk about that. I'm sure that comes up in a lot of your discussions now with a lot of your clients. What are you seeing out there as far as maybe the biggest mistakes that companies are making as far as AI and having that come into their business?
It's interesting. It's been 27 minutes in this meeting, and it was the first time AI came up. So it's
it took a long time. Sorry.
Yesterday I was in a meeting for 3 hours, and it didn't come up until an hour and a half later. So it's there. I went to I had the privilege of being in a discussion with some professionals in the AI space, and the point that this gentleman made, who has a very large firm that does AI work even for like Walmart's and the Targets in the US and big companies, is that you first have to define what it is you need to do or want to do in the market. Like, make sure you're really clear on your strategy and what you want to do. Then you determine what technology is going to serve that. And if AI is simply going to be a dollar for dollar exchange, he says it's probably not worth the investment. He says you have to clearly see where it's going to improve efficiencies or reduce costs significantly before you start going down some of these roads. So what happens with a lot of our businesses, and I'm guilty of this, is something new would come out in technology, and everybody's saying it's the latest and greatest, and I'm buying it and then trying to kind of figure out how to adapt in the business without a clear vision of what we need to do first. So that would probably be the biggest thing that for me, and at this point, working with companies is, yeah, there's a lot of cool things out there, and AI is going to be happening inside your your system somewhere, whether it's in your accounting system or your CRM. The makers of your software or some of the components are going to be using AI somewhere you might not see it, but to apply it in your own business as a strategy, just got to be really clear on what you're doing and then let the technology serve that before you invest.
Mike, any experience on that as well?
Yeah, like I mean, I'll use it a lot from the guide point of view of, helping build workshops on certain topics. But it's not a, one fits all solution here. Like it's good to kind of give you a bit of a foundation that you can then tweak and improve and find what works and what doesn't. So from my point of view, it certainly has been helpful and it sort of bought back a bunch of time for myself. Which has been effective and efficient from that point of view. But prompts are key, and we're still getting better at on how to prompt and ask for certain things. I have been in sessions where we've tried to get some ideas on how to write core values from ChatGPT, and it just comes out extremely generic and corporate and predictable and all the things that we don't want our core values to be, right? So I think that that technology continues to evolve and get better. As we all know, that's not a statement that likely anybody would disagree with, but it has a place, and happy to use it as a resource. But I don't want to lean on it, and I don't think companies should lean on it for all their decision making, because it's not always right, and it doesn't have all the the pieces of the puzzle, and it's kind of it can be very generic. So I think proceed with caution. Lots of great stuff in there as a tool, but it's still evolving, and will continue to get better and more useful over time as we get better with it. Right?
You summed that up about as well as ChatGPT would, I think.
Yeah, a whole bunch of mumble jumble.
But we didn't say how great you look today and how smart you are first.
Yeah, you didn't compliment yourself first. That's the only thing that was missing. That's true. Yeah. So, are there any examples of clients that you guys have had where you've seen really great results from them getting on board with the Pinnacle system? Like some examples of some, the company started here and whatever it was, maybe 6 months, maybe it's 12 months later, they were here thanks to the Pinnacle system. Anything you could share as examples of that?
Yeah, I'll start. Actually, and I'm going to go back to a word you used earlier, Robert, was called crisis, like a business is in crisis. I'd like to define that word because often we perceive crisis as a financial crisis, like the business is leaking money or it's losing money or whatever, and that's CEOs or founders wouldn't necessarily bring us on for a financial crisis, but they might have another crisis of identity. They might have a crisis of, like the example I'll give is as a client who was actually a long-term, long time business, like very profitable, but the CEO was just losing his jam for like, what is the business about? What am I here? It's more of an identity crisis. And as a result, that type of that moves through the organization. And so in the time we've worked together, we've seen like eyes open and engagement and hope for the future. And it's like how do we get that through the team? And now you can start to look where your A players are and elevate the good people. So you start to kind of give a sense of momentum and hope and like joy, even in the business, but financially, which will result in it starting to in a financial way. But that wasn't the driver to go in. So I think it's important to understand that there's different things going on in businesses that sometimes aren't necessarily just financial that we can help with through this type of thing. So that would probably be something that was eye-opening for me and quite positive.
Yeah, I would concur with you on that, Ryan. I think that the financial performance financial performance is the outcome, or an outcome of, you know, good habits and strategies and execution of those strategies. Part of that, of course, you know, right people, right seats, right things, leadership team alignment. I mean, so much of what we do is the CEO has a lot of amazing ideas in his or her head, but they've not downloaded that on the leadership team, or they haven't done it in a way that is clear and concise, right? So I think that's a role that we can play. So, you know, it's about good habits. It's about playbooks or processes, and if we can help with a bunch of those things, inevitably, if the business is healthy from a financial point of view, or at least close to healthy, then a lot of the things that we bring to the table can just make those make that bottom line even better as a result of some tweaks to the way they're running their business, right? So and making quicker, better decisions, and engaging their team, right?
Let's talk about the word fractional. So as Pinnacle guides, you're essentially fractional guides who are operating within your clients' businesses. The audience listening today is full of fractionals, fractional CMOs, CFOs, HR, COOs, et cetera, et cetera. So talk to us a little bit about how you as guides, I would imagine that there's times where you collaborate with other fractional executives who might already be embedded in a leadership team, or maybe sometimes you're working with a leadership team and you see a gap where they need some fractional leadership in there. Tell us a little bit about how that all works together, the Pinnacle system with fractionals.
I could go first, Ryan. I would say, like, I think it's about identifying opportunities. So, I mean, I think that, you know, I have a number of fractionals that I have a relationship with, in general. For example, fractional relationship with CFOs, fractional relationship, or relationship with fractional executive search people, chief marketing officers, benefits, administrators, different tools that we have available to us. So I kind of look at it as, you know, I'm being exposed to all these different clients, and they have multiple needs, and they might not have those relationships. And I'm just happy to make introductions where necessary. I'll give you an example. Is just last week, I was working with a new client that I was onboarding in Basecamp, and we identified that, wow, there's so many, processes, or we call it in the Pinnacle world, playbooks that need to be written here. So standard operating procedures. And that requires a lot of work and is very daunting for the leadership team. It's really not my area of expertise, but, there is a number of resources out there that will come into your organization and do that exact thing. And so us sort of having more tools in our toolkit, even if it's making introductions to these other fractional fractional executives or fractional services, if you will, can add a ton of value for the client. So I'm a big fan of it.
I mean, that goes to the Pinnacle philosophy of, again, objective driven. So within Pinnacle, we have approved partners, and you're one of them, Robert, as to if the business needs a solution, we can pull it in from other parties, because we're not all things to all people, but we want to create an environment where these specialties can be brought in to help solve a problem or create an opportunity. And that's totally within the DNA and the language of what we do in Pinnacle as well. So we look for the top, right? Like I chose Pinnacle because I was looking to be in the top 5% of people in this industry. Like, just at my stage in life, I'm not starting from scratch. I want the 10,000 hours of a whole bunch of really smart people and be able to move that forward along with my own experience. The adaptability of the program and ability to bring in top 5% or really smart people as third parties, whether it's CFOs or CMOs or COOs or whatever, HR. Yeah, let's just bring in the winners. Let's get there.
A lot of CEOs are too much, working in the business instead of on the business. If there's one question that you could have them think about right now that would help take them out of the, in the business and get them thinking about the on the business part, what would that question be that you would say to a CEO listening right now? What would that question be for them to start, get them outside of the forest and be able to see the trees?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it's about, well, I like to start off every session with imagine you're now, everything we talk about today is going to be at 30,000 feet. And we don't want you to be working in the business today. We want to make sure that, we're off site, that we're trying to, dig into some of the bigger picture things. So I think, kind of framing that has been helpful for me. I don't know, for me, it doesn't boil down to one particular question, but rather setting the stage for, how we're going to tackle our objectives for today, which is let's bring this way up and do exactly that. Let's get out of the weeds for the day. And we're not going to sit here talking about micro issues. And when we do find that happening, we redirect the conversation and get it back to where it needs to be. That's kind of been, my perspective.
And on top of that, if we've discussed what that future state looks like, and not every president or CEO has a lot of clarity on the future state. Maybe they did. Maybe they got knocked around a little bit, or things changed, and so that becomes unclear. So once we help identify what does that future state look like, I think the biggest question is, by what means are you going to get there? And if you can get there faster and in a healthier way, where everybody feels a lot better about going to work every day, what would that mean to you? What is the cost of not doing that? And I'm a holistic approach. Like, there's bottom line. Like, we put profit at the center of the Pinnacle system around the other obsessions. It has to make money, and we got to make money. But I'm also like, the people got to be healthy. Like, the president, founder, CEO, he or she has to, have that, and their leadership team. We want people to enjoy where they work and see that. So I think probably isn't a simple answer to your question, Robert, but that's kind of what I see.
All right. Let me throw one more challenging final question at you both. The billboard question, as has come to be known here on the pod. If you could put one message on a billboard for millions of CEOs and business owners to see as they pass by it every day on the highway of life, what would it say?
Well, mine is pretty clear. Leadership matters. And I would leave it right there. And, to add some color to that, but I wouldn't put anything else on that billboard, is that we get to work with CEOs and leadership teams on a regular basis. And poor leadership has so many negative effects on organizations and people and families, and creates all kinds of crises and drama. And I think that if I think about what my core purpose is in the work that I do, it has to be about helping grow better leaders, because it's good for society. And I don't think that that organizations that take their leadership responsibility lightly can really grow and accomplish the things they're setting out to do. So I really believe, I'm adamant about this idea that leadership matters.
All right. Leadership matters. 2 simple words on the billboard.
Yeah.
Ryan, how about you?
Then there was a couple other billboards that Mike would need to explain the rest of it there. If the target audience is the executive, I just have to say, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. Like, there are all kinds of, I think Mike said this early, like, we're in a fortunate era where there's so many solid resources to help. I think it takes a village to raise a business now, and there's so many good resources, from personal coaches, peer groups, business operating systems. Like, yeah, lots of support out there. You're not alone. You just have to have the courage to lean into it.
Yeah, I love that. And I would just add to that that more than ever, what I'm seeing today is people need to not be alone and realize that they're not alone, because there's, as we, we read about it every day, there's more and more isolation happening because of all the social media addiction, and AI is not helping that as well. Interestingly, AI is kind of pushing us to connect in person more and more than ever, because as AI continues to proliferate our universe, we're more and more questioning, is what I'm looking at real? And the only way to know is if you're actually physically present with the other person. And so ironically, AI is bringing humanity, I think, closer together in ways that are a little bit surprising. So
Amazing.
that's a good thing. All right, gentlemen, Mike, Ryan, thank you so much. We'll link up to how people can reach out to you in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.